Hello everyone, welcome to Double Canopy. I'm Joe. Today we have Ben Missimer. He creates beautiful topographical maps with drone photography and sometimes satellite imagery, and always LiDAR or sometimes LiDAR?
Primarily, yeah.
Okay.
Primarily, I like to work with LiDAR.
Okay. And these come together to create beautiful maps that are essential for permaculture designers, himself and many others. So you go into a lot of detail on your own videos, on your own YouTube channel, which I'll link here, about how you got started doing this work. I thought it was really inspirational. I was sort of what's a good word for it? It's not a doom scroller, because it was before social media, right? We were watching really rough gloom and doom documentaries or stuff on YouTube that was just extremely depressing, right? Just like no white pill around, no
Not
hope.
in sight. No.
Not in sight. You saw something. What did you see that was that changed the tune, that changed your mood?
Well, I was kind of a documentary hoarder, heavy consumer. I was on the Netflix 5 at a time return thing, and I was just throwing discs around like ninja stars, you know.
For you young kids, Netflix used to mail out DVDs in the early days.
I feel so old.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it could definitely bring you to a pretty dark place, and you know, there's a lot of acknowledgement of challenging times that we're living through or coming. You know, if you find yourself in a state of depression or high anxiety and you become like, I don't know, I was in that state, and I didn't have anybody holding my hand or chopping down a clear path for me to blaze on. And I don't want people to be depressed, but at the same time, there does need to be a modicum of situational awareness.
Mm-hmm.
That's a little bit of fire under the ass, but that allows you to stack your chips accordingly and not just be continuously sideswiped because you lack that perspective. It's a hard thing to do, to put yourself in that state where you're clockwork oranging yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Like in Indiana Jones in the Temple of Doom, when they're like pulling back the Ark of the Covenant. They're like, don't look at it, it's going to melt your face. Yeah, you feel like that sometimes, but...
Raiders
of the yeah. I definitely get dogged on for that, but... you know, I watched Zeitgeist, which was kind of a really clear paradigm analysis, and
is that the one where it's been a while since I've seen that, but they really hit home the idea of abundance?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. They made probably, I think, maybe 4 of them.
Oh, okay.
But like the Venus Project was something that was kind of like, hey, it was at least an offering of a glimpse of a different paradigm that we could move towards. But that was kind of like an earlier situational awareness film that kind of opened my eyes. But you know, then there's things like The Matrix that kind of hit home. You know, you get little like, oh, okay, that I could see that it playing out. What really changed me from a doom and gloom state was observing Geoff Lawton's Greening the Desert documentary.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that was the first time I was cued into permaculture, and then from there on, I was just, you know, someday I'm gonna have a piece of land and I'll get a permaculture design certificate and I'll do permaculture. But that was like, you know, back in 2008 to the time where things just lined up for me, and it was 10 years later. So yeah, I finally got my land and went through his online training program, and you know, that's kind of what brought me to where I am today, making maps for design purposes.
So you bought your land before you did the course?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Back in 2012. Yeah.
And when you bought your land, were you thinking about these ideas, principles at all?
Permaculture wise or mapping? No. But, oh yeah. I mean, I was a big fanboy since 2008. So I, you know, for about 4 years, I was watching these little videos here and there.
Yeah.
But I was commuting an hour and a half to work, and you know, I'd have like 2 hours of energy left in me on the weekend to do something progressive. Yeah. It was just a fart in the wind, you know. It was,
seriously, yeah.
It's hard to tackle.
Yeah, yeah. It's hard to find energy when you're doing something else. You took the course, and I take it you were struggling with finding data visual data that was high enough resolution to create even functional designs. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, towards the end of the course, everybody is tasked with completing a design exercise so they can kind of be, graded on whether or not they get it and applying an actual design to a terrain. And we were encouraged to use somebody else's property, so you didn't have any like preconceived notions, right? But it was towards the end of my year-long class that I started really looking around at examples of other people's design exercises and seeing how they tackled the problem, which was what I was having, was like realistically depicting this property so I can design something on it. And it's like, yeah, you can take a screenshot from Google Earth, or you can go out there with a piece of paper and take a bunch of like sample points and try to like write something down on a piece of paper. And I saw a lot of people, they were using these online contour generators that were free and just very simplistic early tech.
Are those accurate?
No, that's part of the problem. So it's like I saw people were doing survey work with drones through photogrammetry. So I was like, let me give that a whirl. I want to get a drone anyway so I can capture the before and after and durings of my property development.
Mm-hmm.
And if I could generate topography with it, then bonus,
Yeah.
So, but working with that data is kind of a pain in the ass because it only can analyze what it sees. And if there's a tree in its face covering the ground, then it's a big obscurity to deal with. And there are ways to kind of remove that information and try to patch things up, but it's a bigger pain in the ass,
right,
than it's worth, in my opinion. And it really doesn't give you the accuracy that, come to find out when I'm in that space, I'm like, I have to develop these photogrammetry images and to contours. Okay, so how do I do that? Well, I have to use some sort of a GIS software. So I started out with ArcGIS, and as a student, it's cheap. It's like $100. You get the desktop software. You get all of the packages that they offer. Just the sky's the limit to you. And then when it's time to kick the training wheels off and get serious, now you got a professional license of $700 just for the desktop software, and then every software package that you want. Because GIS software can be used for 1,000 different things.
Sure.
You could be a politician wanting to know what your constituents, like how much they earn and where do they live, and I want a map of that. Or you're doing oil and gas exploration, or you're doing population density or whatever. I mean, it's crazy. Weather,
anything. Yeah
right. So depending on what your needs are, they have different packages, but each one of those packages costs like $1,200 annually. And I needed, for my workflow, it's like I had access to all these tools, and then I started using them, and my workflow carried me through like 4 different packages. So then I was looking at like $6,000 a year annually for software. I was like, okay, hold up. I'm a fledgling. I'm working in a very niche realm. This is not going to work for me. So that's what pointed me towards QGIS, which is open source, freely available software.
Mm-hmm.
And
do you use that exclusively, or?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
They're
awesome. They do everything. At least in my workflow view, I can accomplish everything that I did in Arc over in Q. So, it was fun. But
that's great. Are there LiDAR cameras for drones?
Oh yeah. When I first started looking into when I found LiDAR data and saw how awesome it was, I was like, well, maybe I'll acquire a drone and get a LiDAR rig. But it was like $250,000. And just to calibrate the sensor was $30,000, which you had to do annually and all this other crap. And I was like, you think my neck hurt after the jerk with ArcGIS? And that was a dead end. But now you can get like a drone rig for like $30,000. It's like crazy, dropped off the cliff.
Yeah.
Cheap. I mean, it's still a car. You're still flying a car around.
Yeah.
And you have to have nerves of steel and know what you're doing. That'd be a bad day. You park one of those in a tree, But
yeah.
LiDAR data isn't globally available yet.
Right.
But there are, I want to say, like maybe a year or 2 years out, they're talking about global coverage,
Oh,
which is
wow.
going to be a big game changer.
And who's doing that? Is it a Google, NASA thing?
It's a some startup company invested
Mega millions, mega billions.
billion probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so right now selective areas are covered by LiDAR. So it's really and LiDAR data is primarily collected through taxpayer funding. So governments, for the most part, make that freely available.
Right.
So I'm acquiring free data and manipulating it on NQ, which is open source free data.
Mm-hmm.
You need a decent computer to do it, and it's like I'm all of my workflow. I use QGIS, Affinity Photo, and Affinity Designer. These are all like different languages. You got to know those user interfaces. So there's a slight little learning curve, but I am working on developing a curriculum that will help people, hold their hand through this process. And this is critical analysis of terrain that we need to make in order to make highly informed, critical decisions on planning regenerative systems on landscapes.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't map the world,
right?
But the world needs to be mapped, and it's not a crazy, unachievable thing for anybody to do if they want to put forward that time in learning the software. It's not the Affinity Photo and Designer. That's like it was either $60 or $90 a piece, so $180. Mm-hmm. You're out. You need a decent computer, $180, and a little bit of time. And you don't need to know the ins and outs verbatim of all of these software packages. You just need to follow my lead and use the 10% out of each one of those things to arrive at the product that I make.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a solid read you can see where steep slopes are. So, okay, over there I've got erosion issues, or I'm prone to erosion issues, so it might not be a good idea to take the trees out over there, or maybe I shouldn't route this driveway through here because I'll incur erosion that way, and it's going to cost more to engineer that road. It's better, I can see clearly, to route it over this way. So there's a multitude of intelligent decisions that could be made instantly, instant recognition from anywhere in the world. I was just talking to Geoff yesterday, the day before, and he said, well, there was 100 acres in New South Wales, which is 10 minutes down the street from him. And he's like, I don't even want to drive the 10 minutes to go over there and check it out. I would rather just work.
Pull it up.
It's needless. It's really needless. I can walk around out in that field for 8 freaking hours and not collect, a 1% understanding of what the hell is going on here. It's pointless. And, before, he was having to go fly all over the world constantly to show up on site, walk around, and to deliver some sort of tangible design. But I've been at his side for 5 years now, and I've really cut down that need. Now he's just kind of more showing up here and there for teaching than he is doing consultancy work. And his books have been opened he's been able to consult way more for far less.
That's terrific. That's amazing. And inspiring to hear that he's using and adopting these tools just freely, eagerly, with excitement. It's amazing to me with technology that oftentimes we're not doing anything new. We may be doing them in new ways. Maybe it's saving time, but this seems like an application where we really are. It's definitely a new way of doing it, and it's definitely saving a ton of time and money and impact, if we're talking about flying around the world.
Well, that's what I was noticing when I was going through that class and tasked with depicting the terrain and rendering and design on it. It's like most people out there, if they were at all, were trying to pull terrain data from what's known as the global DEM. And that is a satellite-derived product that has a resolution of 30 meters. And to help people understand what that is, the resolution. If you were to take a picture and zoom way into it, I don't care how high resolution that picture is, you'll eventually see a pixel.
That's right.
Okay, and each one of those pixels, with the satellite data, that pixel represents 30 meters. So it's a pretty large area. Now, LiDAR data, you can get down to half meter. Each pixel is a half meter. So it's equivalent of you looking at like an 8K image versus watching somebody play Minecraft.
Right.
So if people are using that low resolution to zoom way into their properties and try to design, they might as well be blindfolded and just drawing random lines willy-nilly on the paper, because they 100% do not depict the reality of that terrain.
Right.
So if a designer was to take that topological image and then say, okay, I want you to put a walkway through here, I want you to put a swale on contour here, which is going to take you over there. Like, everything is the backbone. Everything is built on that. And then when the client would go out there with their laser levels or water levels and start digging, it's like, well, shit, that routed me over in this direction instead of over there. It's like,
right.
Yeah, that's what you're going. That's the risk and harm of using shitty data.
Yeah.
So, that level of data is appropriate if you wanted to zoom way out and have like an overhead view of your entire county or something. That's cool. But if you want to zoom in and work 2 acres, I got bad news for you. It's not. Right. It's a no bueno.
Yeah. So let's talk about your product, your maps. On your website, you show multiple layers. You show the imagery. You show your own design layers. You show topology, hydrology. Is each final map that you produce for a client the same, or are you doing different variations for different applications?
I don't like to do a la carte piecemeal. I like to give them a full suite of base maps that they can stack up. You can print them out, and laminate them and sketch on them. That's one way to approach it. But ideally, you're going to want to be interacting with these digitally. This software isn't, $60 or $90. If you're a designer, that's nothing to invest in.
Sure.
You spend a couple of weekends watching some, Udemy or whatever tutorials on the basics of these software packages. You'll know the user interface, and you'll be up and running in like 6 hours of committed time. It's not a huge hurdle to overcome, But ideally, what they would do is they would take each one of these images that are exactly the same, but they're different versions of that area. So they can stack them on top of each other and just cycle them off and on, depending on what they want to analyze. So if they want to, it's to provide an overall accurate sense of the altitude change across the landscape, how water flows across that landscape, the different slopes that are found in that landscape, the solar aspect and slope of that terrain in relation to the sun, the solar aspect. You want to put a garden. You want to put a garden on a shady side or the full slope towards the sun. Do you want to put a garden on an area that's 15 degrees of slope, or is it more appropriate to find something like 0 to 4 degrees? It's just like an instant read. I'm looking for a flat area to build a house. Okay, well, there's 3 areas on this property. Bam, they're right here.
Yep.
Out there with a ruler taking rise and run measurements, or licking your finger and sticking it up in the wind, or using what they call those dowels for finding waters.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
This is not magic. This is like a high degree of detail and science and accuracy that I'm deploying.
So how many people would you say you give a map to, and they say, well, okay, that's the obvious place to put a house or a foundation, a platform, whatever, but I really want it over here. That's
the beauty of the maps, because you can justify, you can tell them straight up, point blank, look right here. If you do that, you have water coming from here and over here, and it's coming for you. So unless you want to build a bunch of sandbags or like invest in some French drain action, you're in for a bad time.
Sounds like a horror movie. The water.
But I've seen. There's a Krishna farm that I volunteer at from time to time. I've made maps for them. I try to go out there and make suggestions, and I'm looking at, because we're out here in the sticks, and there's not a lot of zoning regulations, and they're putting up, cinder block houses here and there, and I'm like, why? Well, who thought that this was a good idea? But the average homesteaders, they move out to the sticks because they don't want a lot of rules and regulations. But you're out there thinking you have a good idea, you might want to. It's gonna, oh man, if you mess it up, if you mess roads up, building placement, that is a serious financial hurt.
Yeah, and it's going to be a problem into the future too. It'll just never go away. The terrain problems.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you get your information from multiple places, drones, satellites. Is it, if you're going to a property, do you get drone photography and map it to LiDAR data, or is that always going to be off, or can you get a straight down view and map it correctly?
If there's a drone involved, that's way better than the satellite image, because of course it's the most up-to-date image, and the last satellite image might be from 6 years ago or something.
Right.
That's not always the case, but if it's available, I'll incorporate it for sure. I actually, on my website, I made a nice little tutorial that people can follow if they have a drone, or maybe if their friend has a drone, that they can follow and get me the images that I need in order to make, to use it in the maps. Great.
And what do you do if there is no LiDAR?
I wish them well now. I just tell them the reality, the reality of I can only make a map with the data that's available, and the accuracy of that map, it is what it is. So I gotta explain to them and show them the contrast of reality and how actually useless it is. And if they could hire, because there's outfits out there that work with power companies or construction companies that, hey, can you LiDAR these power lines here? So just little small jobs, they're there to hire. So it might cost another couple $1,000s. I don't know. I can't say it. It's really depends on your location, and I'm global, so I can never tell anybody, this is the range you should expect to pay. But
right.
But there really is no other option for me to do the job at the level that I can do it, and that's what you want. The only way I can get that to you is based on that. And there's places like in the Middle East that you can't drone up. There's no data, and if you throw a drone up, they're shooting it out of the sky. You know what I'm saying? It's bad news, but this LiDAR data is desperately needed, and if the globe is covered over the next couple of years, that's really going to open up a lot of doors. So I'm excited about that.
What's the average dimension of the point cloud that you download? Like how much on average of a square footage, square miles, how much area do you cover?
I think the most amount of tiles I've ever pulled to cover an area is 80.
Okay.
And each tile hovers around a gig. Just it's.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, and sometimes my project files, they get hundreds of gigs in size. So these are big boy toys. You need a machine. You need storage.
Does that come down when you process the raw data?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because you don't need as many points as they provide, I'm assuming.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's it's a lot.
I always grab more than I need, then I trim it down. But
okay.
It depends on the area. Like I said, if you're trying to depict the entirety of a state, it's more reasonable and manageable file size wise, resolution wise, to be wielding a 30 meter.
Sure.
If you want to cover an entire country, they got 90 meter resolution data. That's perfect.
Yeah.
But typically, if somebody came to me and says, "Hey, I got a quarter acre lot. Can you do it?" I'm like, "Yeah, I can." But at that level, you might as well be out there with an A-frame or something on the weekend, just kind of marking it out with a spray paint can.
Yeah,
or something.
And to that end, there's probably apps that can give you a point cloud on the ground, right?
Yeah, there is LiDAR built in to the latest iPhone. I have
Yeah.
not.
Yeah, and people are doing.
I've not tried scanning a terrain and
Mhm.
messing with that point cloud yet, but I imagine it would be doable.
Yeah.
But typically, 5 acres to 600 acres is the range that I play in. Sometimes
Okay.
I'll get big, giant maps that takes me 3 weeks to work
Process.
up, but
Yeah.
generally my maps, this package, this suite of maps. Like I said, I don't typically do a la carte. I give you the works. You know, for me to produce all of that takes me between like a day and a half, 2.5 days,
Wow.
and
That seems really fast.
well, you know, there's a lot that I do on the back end, the
Yeah,
secondary part of my.
you're doing like Illustrator stuff too. And
Yeah, that's the back end. Like taking all of the derivatives come from the point cloud, and the point cloud is exactly that. It's points that are in a cloud of data, and each one of those points has an X, Y, and Z coordinate. So
Right.
it's georeferenced points that they connect those points to make a mesh, to make a 3D terrain with, and you know, we're talking millions and millions of points. So it's like, it's a very clear depiction of that terrain. And once I have that terrain, then I can do all of my geo-processing calculations against it. So that's going to give me my slope. That's going to give me my aspect. It's going to give me my shading. That's going to give me my altitude. It's going to give me my contour lines. Literally, everything is backboned off that cloud. But there's a lot of artifacts that are there, especially like in the hydrology. I'll spend a whole day correcting little bullshit lines here and there and make it as best as I can. I put everything I have into it.
Mhm.
But, you know, and then there's like, I depict every item that's on that property. It's a feature. So if it's a tree, if it's a building, if it's a fence, if it's a road, if it's a pool, whatever it is, I digitally draw it. So there's a lot of digital artistry that goes into it on the back side as far as refinement and creation. So you got the front end and then the back end. All in all, I'd say 1.5, 2.5 days roughly, typically.
Incredible. It just seems like if I were to do that, I do a lot of graphic stuff too, and that seems like a really short turnaround.
I get up at 4 in the morning, and I usually don't stop twitching until 4. So it's not really an 8-hour workday either. So
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
I say 20 to 30 hours, and it's not just me in here. You know, I've
Yeah.
got a whole nother system here. I got my childhood best friend. He's my co-pilot up in here,
And that's Charles Roselle, is that right?
that's right, Charlie
Okay.
Roselle. Yeah.
That's watching some of your YouTube videos. It's really cool what you guys have set up, and it's a dream. You know, if you've ever had close friends that you work well together, that's like it's a beautiful thing you guys have set up.
I can't complain. You know, my commute was an hour and a half, and now I work out of the house, and my commute's, you know, literally 10 steps, and
Yeah.
I'll be damned if I throw a pair of shorts on. My uniform of the day is boxers and a t-shirt, you know.
That's pretty cool. So I'm admiring your setup too. You guys got these incredible wraparound screens. How wide are they? And they're curved too, right?
Yeah, they're curved. They're called ultra wide.
Okay.
I think it's like the equivalent of 3 27-inch monitors, just kind of stacked side by side.
Incredible. Yeah, I have 2. Sometimes I've worked with 3. A vertical one for browser stuff, and then 2 for UI and tools on the other side. So it's essential when you're doing graphics.
No, I'll have Google Earth up. I'll have QGIS up. I'll have, you know, my Illustrator up.
Mm-hmm.
I'll have, you know, internet YouTube video playing some lo-fi in the corner, whatever. I use every bit of this real estate.
That's great.
Again, it goes back to a machine. You need a decent machine. You're gonna want a decent monitor.
Do you mind if I ask what you have? What kind of
monitor?
No, the CPU, GPU.
Well, the one Charlie's working on, I built that one custom. That one cost me about $2,500, and the one I had custom made for 3D. Because that's another thing is I'm going to be moving my workflows, morphing into the 3D realm. So I'm going to be using Blender, which is another freely open source
Yeah,
software.
it's incredible.
But this one I had custom made from Puget Systems, and that was five. That was five.
Yeah, I've built a few machines, and I would say I built multiple $3,000 range machines, and that's just like you're coming into the higher end of things. Obviously, it can go way crazier than that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a good machine. So Andrew Millison and Geoff Lawton are two big examples of permaculture designers who you work with. How has your work impacted theirs? What were they doing before, and how are they doing things now?
I really changed up Jeff's game with the need to globally travel, and leveraging remote sensing has cut, increased his availability for consulting work. But he likes to travel with his family too. So you want a consultancy from Geoff, you want to fly him out, you're going to pay for the whole crew and
that's great.
Food and whatever. So
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and people they still want him to come out, but he's like, man, I don't need to, I don't want to.
Mm-hmm.
But like Andrew, he doesn't do consultancy so much as he does, and he does teach permaculture.
Mm-hmm.
But he's more into doing documentaries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I highly recommend to everybody. I share his videos when they come out. He and Geoff both have been huge inspirations. Millison's YouTube channel, it's every single video is so valuable and incredibly well done. He knocks it out of the park every time. It's incredible.
Yeah. He I came to him probably 3 years ago now, when he put out one video about the Pawnee Foundation and how they were changing. It's like the world's largest permaculture project.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, what's this now? And I don't hesitate. I'll reach out to whoever and drop them a message. And be like, yeah, what's up? Let's dance.
Mm-hmm.
So I just whipped a couple of animations at him and said, hey, I'd like to do something with you and help tell the story. And he's like, all right, let's dance. So, I've been helping them tell the Pawnee story and the India's water revolution that they're going on.
Incredible series.
It's really, really inspirational stuff that out there with pickaxes.
Yep.
Getting it,
Yeah.
And, I would love to see that for our country. I mean, we have a nation of perfectly usable tractors. And like what I've done on my 10 acres with the smallest tractor in the fleet, I've made retention ponds and swales. I've carved it up. So, I mean, we eradicated the beaver by and large long ago, but they were the ones that were out there primarily engineering and banking the water in the ground. And it's really up to us to modify our terrains and make hydration stations for nature and start banking water in the ground and acting as, we can't be so on demand instant tap. We need to create like you're playing a bagpipe. We got to blow air into that bag so when that drought hits, we got reserves. It's not such a crisis moment.
Yeah, I mean, basically we could engineer it so that there's never a crisis. And it's completely possible. We just have to do it, and we know how to do it. People have been doing it around the world, as the water revolution videos have shown. John D. Liu's work has shown in China.
Yeah, we've been in Mexico talking about the ancient Chinampas. We've been in Hawaii talking about their systems. So I'm like super proud to be a part of depicting that paradigm and holding it up and pointing to it, so that we can once again in mass champion these systems and not just beg for a different paradigm, but build it, because the system isn't broken. It's designed to run as it is, and it's everybody's had about enough of it, and they're looking for a way that they can adapt and overcome. And if you look at my YouTube channel, I made a movie. Essentially, it's like an hour long, a very clear assessment of our situation. More importantly, a very clear vision of how we go about shifting this paradigm. And I work with top talent out there, and we have a vision, and we're developing a very clear plan. And there's some big things coming out that I'm working with Geoff Lawton on that I think people are gonna get pretty excited about. He's doing some film festival in France in a couple of weeks. We're putting together a little package on, but he's about to start presenting. I don't want to take the wind out of his sail.
Yeah, no,
But
that's
things
exciting.
are about to start popping off. Yeah,
Exciting.
I mean, you can kind of get glimpses of it. You go watch my
Uh-huh.
movie.
Yeah, wonderful. So changing technology, changing usage, how might these maps that you make be used in the future? You were talking about getting into the 3D space. I saw Millison use like an augmented reality type table.
Yeah, he uses a sandbox, which is kind of fun to play around and spitball concepts and morph the sand.
Yeah.
and
Was it
make the terrain on the fly.
is that just what the platform is, or was that with graphics that you provided, or?
No, that's all built in.
Okay.
It's like a projector facing down. It just, I don't know, it reads and sends information at the same time. It's been around for a minute. It's pretty cool and sophisticated. He also does like these fluorescent pins and a stand-up glass board that he likes to draw and animate on.
They're amazing. Have you pulled any of your data into something like a VR headset and manipulated it, or done anything in that realm?
Yeah, I have. It's a little wonky for me as far as designing on it. It's cool to display it, but as far as like working with it to actually artistically engage with it, it's kind of cumbersome. It's more of a display your work type of thing, I think. I've been dabbling with Blender, but I've just been. It's not beyond me at all to comprehend and wield. I will be shortly. It's just I've been pulled between the homestead and marketing and servicing clients, and I'm developing this curriculum so I can have an educational platform to teach people this, and I'm also working on another book project which is kind of like encapsulating the last chapter in the Permaculture Designer's Manual, which is like bioregional organization.
Okay.
It's essentially a rebirth of our nation and bringing back all of the mom and pop operations that are going to be directly in service of like an agrarian centric lifestyle. So we can't afford to depend on people like China to stock Walmart to service all of our needs for obvious reasons. They probably won't be inclined to do so for much longer. I mean, they're financially tied to our consumerism in one aspect, but at the same time, if we keep pissing on their toes and we want to engage physically with them, what would stop them from disrupting our supply line? That's just like an obvious that's just an obvious one-off pointing to the frailty of the system we depend on. So it's incumbent upon every one of us to acknowledge the harsh realities of all of our many vulnerabilities, but also we're just by and large dissatisfied with the work that we have to do in order to get the modest amount of money that we do get, and in order to exchange for piss poor food that lands us in piss poor health and so on and so forth. It's like by and large we're displeased, and it's not serving us well, the current paradigm we're in. But there is a very clear path to flip that on its head and change the game, and that's really what this movie I put together is all about. So this book it clearly highlights, if we were to take all of our own needs into account, and like on a more micro level, when you're designing permaculture sense, it's like this property, what are all my input requirements, and how can I service that need? And we can't be the jack of all trades effectively.
Right.
We all have our own interests and specialties and tools, mental and physical tool sets that we can bring to the table that will build a master Rolodex that will essentially check every single box of our needs. And this is going to be a template of curriculum for our schools to adapt, for career counselors to guide people with. So that kind of in a nutshell is what the core of my other book projects I'm working on is about. But I'm burning it at both ends. I'm just trying to get it done because I see the great need, and I'm trying to rise to this time, and in the military sense, it's all really adapt and overcome, and being born and raised in the military, serving in the military, and as from a survival standpoint, which is exactly how I came to permaculture.
Right.
It is about adapting and overcoming, and properly assessing the situation we're in.
Yeah. I love how you bring up that Millison quote of having, this can be done with just 10% of the population. If just 10% of the people adopt these habits and practices and principles, then they can provide for everyone in their community. That's not how it would be. Obviously, you and I both know this kind of work and thinking, it's inspiring, it's meaningful, it gives us inspiration. There would be, if we implemented things at scale, a lot more involvement, more than 10%. But again, abundance. It's an inspiring thing, and we just need to redesign it.
Well, there's an opportunity here, because what I'm seeing, and you'll see it very clearly if you watch the movie I put together, is there's going to be quite a large amount of resettlement, livable areas. Everybody's supplied downstream from the Colorado River, and their water supply is like above ground reservoirs, and groundwater supplies are, if you analyze it, you don't need to go and analyze it. I bring it right to you, and I put it right in your face. What are the ramifications of that? Water is life. If you don't have it, your ass is moving.
Yeah.
And where are they moving to, and what are they doing? Are they all going to get jammed up in Florida?
Right.
Because look at Florida's groundwater situation. Look at how they're pulling from the aquifers. Look at how ocean water is infiltrating because of that pull. It's sucking from the ground, so it's pulling the ocean water and salinating their water supplies.
Right.
Look at all their houses falling into sinkholes. How many people you're going to have a capsize of, it's like, we have a rescue boat. Okay, let's put 5,000 people on it. Well, everybody dies because you just capsized your boat. In Mississippi, 80% of Mississippians rely on groundwater primarily, and we're not in surplus. Our trend is in decline. So let's move 80 million people into the state and do just what we're doing, which is pumping out of the ground, water out of the ground. It's out of sight, out of mind, but you better get hip quick.
Yeah.
And are we going to relocate everybody and have dense urban sprawl, or are we going to move into a rural agricultural landscape and build intelligent homesteads? Are we going to go at this individually, or are we going to try to team up with our family and friends and say, hey, let's get 10 acres, let's split it up in 3 or 4 sections, we'll have a common area, we'll have animals over here, we'll have retention ponds, blah 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 blah, and actually design that landscape to bank water instead of shed it off, to be resilient instead of dependent on the groundwater, which is going to leave everybody extremely dissatisfied in a short amount of time. So, like I said, we have a legion of tractors and an overwhelming availability of LiDAR data, and we could systematically go at this and really revolutionize everything.
So why do you think billionaire developers haven't done this?
There's a couple of examples of like community. You have home HOAs, Nazis. You can't have a brown doormat. It's got to be beige.
No, I mean this trend of a billionaire philanthropist making a smart city in the desert. You know, there's all these projects popping up. Google has their smart city projects. The Pawnee Challenge was, I don't know how long ago, maybe 8 years ago or something like that. John D. Liu's work in China, documenting the Loess Plateau project, that was over 10 years ago. Like, we know how to do it. We know it can be done. We've seen results.
The thing is, anybody wielding that power, by and large, is, they're probably tied to the system that's benefiting from us being 100% dependent upon their products and services. Billionaire developers, they're probably more inclined to build a 15-minute city and have you eating bug cakes than out there on 2 acres with you got 30 chickens and a nice garden. They don't want to see that. They want to see you crammed up in a cityscape and highly surveilled. So
yeah,
this is I'm trying to pull people 180-degree opposite direction of what, like, the World Economic Forum is advocating. I see figureheads like Greta Thunberg, and this rubs people the wrong way, but I don't care. And I've challenged many Extinction Rebellion people to this. I want you to go do a Google search right now and find me all of the relevant articles or video interviews that she's done praising permaculture or regenerative agriculture.
Right.
It's, you got to change, we got to do something, but it's never, well, okay, what is it?
Yeah,
it's like there are an astroturfed bullshit movement that is just solely there to rah for the powers that be to roll out this whole green agenda.
Yeah, I feel like the people who support it too are they just stopped at the doom and gloom documentaries. They didn't go farther. They never saw Geoff Lawton.
Yeah. We got a bunch of pissed off nihilistic people gluing their asses to streets and throwing paint instead of out there freaking building communities, and I got no love for it. I call it out 100%.
I don't think many people do.
I
get on Just Stop Oil's Instagram or Twitter, and the ratio, it's pretty extreme. People hate it. Yeah.
You don't think some permaculture advocates went up to Greta and tapped on her shoulder, tried to reach out? How many years has she been out there screaming? I don't buy that shit for a millisecond.
Yeah. Well.
And if you look at the movie Planet of the Humans.
Yeah.
Excellent teardown of that reality.
Yep, absolutely. And no one talks about it. I bring it up to people. I thought, even if, say you don't agree with everything, or you challenge it, it brings up some incredible points. Like, there's no Superman technology in this. The thing that inspires me the most is a tractor, regenerative farming. It's things that require almost very little technology. Like you said, people out there with pickaxes and shovels. Like, it can be done very simply.
Yeah. Go Google the world's largest permaculture project.
Yep.
You want to talk about it inspiring.
Yep. People turning things around in 45 days. 45 days. So, yeah, it can be done. It can be done at scale, and it can be done quickly. We could be actually inputting water in abundance into the soils and the aquifers. It's 100% possible. We just need to do it.
Amen.
Do you want to talk about client success stories at all?
Primarily, I do the front end, and then like Geoff or another designer will design, and then then they go and do the installation. So I never really, it's very rare that I see the post.
Right.
So I mean, permaculture design in itself is a winning strategy. And the success stories of permaculture can be seen globally. The success story about myself and the interaction with that winning strategy is just, it's more accessible and factual, and I'm enhancing permaculture so it can be designed and installed with more precision and be more successful.
Are you involved? I know you have communities developing around your technologies and curriculum for making these types of maps. But are you involved in like permaculture communities like Permies or anything like that?
No, I haven't. I haven't hit up Hermes yet. You know, I'm open. I'm open to collaborate with anybody. I'd love to. You know, anybody out there doing TED Talks or making documentaries. Uh, I would. I would suggest that they come to me, and I would love to help them depict the terrains. Because it's like one thing to be standing out on a landscape, and you know, I'm pointing over here, and then you see over here, they came down this hill here, see, and then we dug out this ditch over here, and it's hard to put yourself in that space, but you know, pulling up from there in a bird's eye view, looking down at the terrain, and seeing as he's saying that narrative,
Mm-hmm.
actually seeing the terrain reality, and I could even back that with like effects.
Sure.
Uh,
Yeah, the hydrostrobing, that's an incredible effect.
Hydrostrobing is very effective at helping understand how water cascades down a landscape. It's
Mm-hmm.
just, yeah. I mean, I can draw arrows, fade in, you know, shapes or whatever. I mean, whatever little cheesy text
Yeah.
to help bolster what you're talking about on top of a whoop-ass map. That's really what's missing, and it's like really hard for the average person to understand the concept of like what's even a contour.
Right.
You know, it's you know, and like
Well, I mean,
doing,
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. It's the same thing as the lines on a topographical map, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, right, exactly.
So I mean, everybody's seen a topographical map.
Well,
Maybe most
maybe.
people. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know, Geoff, he has this online class, and he tracks what the questions are and provides answers to it,
Mhm.
right? And then so it's like, what's the number one question? What's the number two question? The number one question is, what is a contour?
Mm-hmm.
And then the second thing people get crazy about is with mosquitoes. Like, won't making swales increase like the mosquito population? And then, you know, there's hundreds of questions.
Wait,
other than that, which is-
whoa. What's his answer?
The answer is that water doesn't hang around long enough for the life cycle of a mosquito to drop eggs and then sprout from it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's those little pots hanging out in the corner that have a quarter inch of water in the bottom of them. That's where all your skeeters are popping off from. But
Mm-hmm.
you know, even like little retention ponds. That my retention pond might hold 3 bathtubs worth of water in there, but there's like 80 frogs screaming at night. I can hear them. It's deafening.
Yeah.
If you think a little squiggling mosquito larvae has a half second of life chance in that water system, it's ecological systems that are filled with life are going to combat
Right.
that. It's the dead
Yeah.
bucket of water in the corner that's hurting you. So
Yeah. Yeah. I feel I'm pretty much in the suburbs, and in California. I don't know if I told you where I'm at, but
no.
in the Bay Area, California, and it's you know, it's a beautiful place, but it is pretty sanitized, and they spray for mosquitoes because the wildlife it's decreased since I was a kid living in this area. We used to go to the creek and see crawdads, rats, you know, varmints and snakes, garter snakes, frogs. I don't see any of that anymore. It's outdoor cats, it's this and that, but like the bug population, the critter population has gone off the deep end. And yeah, they have to spray for mosquitoes, and that's awful. They're poisoning another water supply.
It's no bueno.
No bueno. No bueno. So, has there been any news events, current events that have sparked your interest from a mapping perspective? I just heard about the fires in Lahaina, Hawaii, or was it Maui? Where was it? I think it was Maui.
I think it was on Maui.
Yeah, but Lahaina was destroyed. I mean, the first thing I think about is rebuilding in maybe a better way. We've had fires, terrible fires in California. You know, generation ago, they had a fire and then they rebuilt in the same fire corridor and it happened again. How can we redesign that to, maybe not live in that place, or design it in a way that is less prone to disastrous fires?
That's a shame, man.
Yeah.
You know, LiDAR technology, for the most part, is probably used for more harm than good.
How so?
I mean, let's just say you're doing recon on military targets, or you're doing oil and gas exploration, or off the top of my head. But as far as like regenerative agriculture design, by and large, it's off the table for most people. But one thing I do find really highly interesting is I follow Graham Hancock and his exploration into lost civilizations, and to help tell the story of the untold, the lost or hidden story of mankind. Him and Randall Carlson, they're showing in the landscape obvious evidence of huge movements of water and material across landscapes. That's helping us pinpoint, helping us pinpoint in time catastrophe. And I don't know what the Vatican has locked up. I don't know what artifacts have been seized in general, are down in DARPA being worked on, or just in private collections. But by and large, there's something more to the story we're not being told. And having them show what lies beneath crazy overgrown forests, just vast networks of cities, and it's pretty intriguing. So.
Yeah, historically, everything. I love Hancock's. I think it's a T-shirt or a bumper sticker. Everything just keeps getting older. I mean, it's you see something, Lost City of Z being discovered with LiDAR in the Amazon. It makes you wonder what fraction of history we don't understand. We don't have a clue about. It's pretty sizable.
The fluctuation of the ocean has been much higher than it is, and much lower than it is. And I always wonder about the hardships that our ancestors had to go in order to eke out life during the craziest of times. Yeah. One of the things that Graham points out is, and Randall Carlson and other archaeologists, it's like this dude running around with a handbag. He's there to reboot humanity, I think, is what that the commonality there. I mean, it's as crazy as like pyramids being like on every continent. It's like Egypt's not special. Right. There was a connection and a commonality in trade globally. The Perry Reese map showing Antarctica's land. Right now it's under like crazy amounts of ice. Well, somebody knew where the shoreline was, and we just figured it out with technology that could penetrate miles of ice. Yeah, we see the coastline. Oh shit, they drew that 600 years ago on a map. Well, how did they get that map? Well, they sourced it from other maps. And those maps probably burnt up in the Library of Alexandria, or whatever the chaotic story is, or maybe that shit's locked up in the Vatican. I don't know. Yeah. But our history is much deeper, and it kind of leaves me with the feeling of, it doesn't matter how bad shit gets, we're going to adapt and overcome one way or another. And I those people that were running around with handbags saying, hey, we got to build something, they weren't proposing what we're at right now. Right. They're proposing what probably more resembles what's in the permaculture designer's manual. What
do you mean walking around with handbags? What is that, like Johnny Appleseed?
No, there's like, they're etching into stone a bunch of different cultures. There's this dude with a little handbag in there.
I see what you're saying, yeah.
So, people are like hardcore about species, like native species. No, we can't grow all this other stuff because this is what belongs here. Right. But just like that ocean that was hundreds of feet higher than it is in both ways. Temperatures have traveled up and down, from the equator. Oh, it's tropical. Well, guess what? It's 103 here in Mississippi today, and maybe 10 years from now it's going to be 103 up in Tennessee or whatever. I mean, that our hardiness zone, that shit's fluid. So we have to we got to be like Moses and like, okay, let me take this tree and move it 100 miles north, and then hopefully propagate it out for a couple of centuries, and maybe eventually we'll move it back down south or whatever. But Geoff is just like a big. He has no time for that native species.
Really?
Commitment. It's like we have to use everything on the table.
That's interesting.
Shit is critical, and if there's something that we could bring in to do the work that needs to be done, versus losing it all because what's there available is no longer able to do the job. We got to move off of that. We got to move away from that mentality and use it all.
I've always had a problem with the invasive species issue. Not that I'm an expert on it or have studied extensively, but just in the back of my mind, there's something that bothered me about it. And I remember listening, I think it was Ray Archuleta, the soil scientist. He said that you basically just need roots in the ground. You need to cover the soil. And what happens when you see weeds or invasive plants you don't want, it's nature trying to cover up and cool down the soil. And that's just what it's trying to do. And is that bad? No, not necessarily bad at all. So use every tool in the arsenal. And I mean, if something like pigs in Hawaii or they cane toads in Australia, it's it can be apocalyptic and devastating to an ecosystem. But is it just the process of balancing out and finding a new equilibrium?
Yep. Diversity is key. Mm-hmm. The more that is the padding that covers our ass. So there's things that no longer are appropriate for an area. They no longer thrive. Something else is going to move into that space. Like here we have privet and what is it, the other holly? Jesus, the laurel.
Oh, I'm so bad with plant names.
I'm really bad with tree species names, scientific names and all that, but essentially it's an understory and it's either one or the other. And permaculture, you're mimicking a forest structure. Something is always going to fill that niche. So if you need an understory tree, you take those out and then you put something that's more productive to you, deliver some food. But at the same time, we have to take into account nature's appetite and thirst. And if all that you plant out there is things that you like, they're coming. They got to eat. So it's just part of the overall strategy.
Yeah. How big is your property?
10 acres.
10 acres. And is it fully cultivated and terraced? And
that's another interesting point. Is like what's an adequate land? If we're talking about 3/4 of America relocating, right? Should they buy a 10th of an acre lot and have a dense urban situation, or do we have zoning involved and say you can't acquire land and develop on anything less than X, right? What's suitable for a household to meet their needs?
I like 10 acres. It sounds good to me.
Well, you look at people like Jules Dervais and his family, I think out of San Bernardino. He's dead now. But they, on a 10th of an acre, right? They were producing their own electricity. They had pedal bikes for their blender and just like crazy,
amazing,
to the nine commitment of meeting their own needs. But on a 10th of an acre, they were able to put out like 7,000 pounds of produce a year. That's crazy. I mean, he had I think 3 of his kids, two daughters and a boy, I think, helping him. So 4 people on a 10th of an acre.
That's amazing.
That's probably one of the most dense scenarios. But me myself, I got 10 acres, and I've done swaling all over the place to get the ball rolling on hydrating the landscape, but I don't have it all planted in yet. I only have the front half, about 5 acres, really planted in, developed, and that space comprises of my household and my friend Charlie's household, and we have a big garden in between. We have an orchard in between. We got chickens in between, and that's probably about 4.5 acres worth of land, and it's a lot to take to stay on top of with 2 households.
Right.
So the question is, Like, how much time do you have?
Right. Yeah.
You got to be honest with your ability, your physical ability, how much time you can.
Right.
As a designer, I can design you $1 million system or a $10,000 system, but the big question is, are you going to be able to spin all of these plates?
Right. And are there people who want, clients or designers who want to do things not necessarily to build a food forest, but just to change the landscape, to change the hydrology so that it just sort of works for maybe 20, 30, 50 years or something without touching it. Just, here's my 20-acre backyard, make it a working system that I don't have to lift a finger on.
With enough time, any landscape is going to go through a series of changes and eventually arrive at a forested area. But a really good example of modifying the landscape and then walking away and looking at it, 50 years later, whatever, is back during the Depression era. I think Roosevelt, they made those swales out in Arizona, I think it was.
Yep.
And both Bill Millison, Geoff, Andrew Millison, they've all been out there and walked up and over that mound, and it's just like you're walking out in a desert and you stumble upon an oasis. And all that they did was push up a mound of dirt, and what settled in there, from birds crapping to water settling to just whatever, wind blowing seed into it. It is absolutely amazing.
Truly. Yeah, that's the kind of thing I dream about. Just what can we do in the middle of nowhere to start sinking water, transform the landscape, and incredible example.
But we know what's coming. We see it. We're feeling it now.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a mystery. We know what it looks like. It's a matter of time. We know we're going to be hungry. Okay, let's plant a fruit tree. Okay, well, it's going to take 5 years for that fruit tree to bear.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's like if you build it, they will come. You have to put the horse in front of the cart. You have to plant the rain and then plant the garden.
Yep.
And the clearest, most precise way to plant the rain is having a clear depiction of the terrain and modifying it to capitalize on the passive energies of natural rainfall, gravity. It's not rocket science. It's very easy. You could go out there and tackle 10 acres with a water level and a pickaxe, Indian style, if you really wanted to.
Yeah. Yeah, but, and the amount, even in the desert, the amount of rain that falls, it's an incredible amount of water. And it's just about harvesting it, managing it, and storing it. Yep. Spreading it out, sinking it in.
Is that right?
Yep. Well, Ben, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. I love your setup. I love what you do. Inspired. I'm inspired by what you do. And thank you for joining me.
Yeah, man. Thanks for inviting me on here and helping me tell this story. And hopefully people are inclined and go check out my YouTube channel and my website, Pearl River Eco Design, and see what we're doing, because it's big time and it's exactly what it's called for at this moment in time. So start tugging on sleeves and tapping on shoulders and telling your homies it's about to get real.
Great. I agree 100%.
One way or another.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you, sir.
You got it, man. Later.
Later.